A stolen house, a broken family, Sarah's path to family conflict and solutions. Welcome to our channel, Silent Wars. In today's video, we'll dive into some of the most common family challenges and offer practical family conflict and solutions. Whether it's minor misunderstandings or serious disputes, we have tips and strategies that can help you restore peace in your home. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more valuable content on resolving family conflicts and building healthier relationships. Sarah Bennett stepped through the oak doors of her mother's grand home in upstate New York, her boots leaving faint trails of snow on the polished hardwood floor. The December air clung to her thrift store coat, a stark contrast to the fur-lined cashmere jackets draped over the entryway rack. In her hands, she cradled a small, carefully wrapped gift, a silk scarf from a quaint Albany boutique, purchased with $50 she'd saved from her modest paycheck as a library assistant. It was Diane's 60th birthday, a milestone celebration that promised warmth and family unity, or so Sarah had hoped. At 34, she was the overlooked middle child, forever caught in the shadow of her glamorous sister Claire and charismatic brother Ethan. Tonight, that shadow would deepen, carving a wound that sparked hurt, shock, and a suspenseful curiosity about her place in her family's story. The house buzzed with opulence, the air rich with the aroma of roasted lamb and the faint pine scent of a 10-foot Christmas tree adorned with crystal ornaments. A jazz rendition of Winter Wonderland drifted from hidden speakers, its cheer feeling oddly hollow, like a veneer over something colder. Guests mingled in the living room, their laughter punctuated by the clink of champagne flutes. Diane, the evening's queen, sat at the center of a velvet sofa, her crimson dress catching the glow of a chandelier. Her diamond earrings sparkled with every tilt of her head, and her smile radiated pride, though it never quite reached Sarah. Robert, Sarah's father, sat beside Diane, his face etched with the quiet resignation he wore at such events. Claire, 38 and radiant, admired her fresh manicure while chatting with their Aunt Margaret, her voice dripping with the confidence of someone who'd just opened a boutique in Manhattan. Ethan, 30 and ever the charmer, debated craft bourbon with cousins, his laughter filling the room like he owned it. Sarah's arrival went largely unnoticed. Claire flicked her eyes toward her, offering a curt, "You made it," her tone as dismissive as if Sarah were a late delivery driver. "Of course," Sarah replied, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack. Diane didn't rise from her throne, merely waving a manicured hand. "Put the gift over there, dear, and find a seat. Dinner's almost ready." The words landed like a pebble in a pond, rippling with indifference. Sarah hung her coat, its worn fabric out of place among the designer labels, and placed her modest gift box beside a pile of glossy bags Gucci, Tiffany, names that screamed wealth. Her $50 scarf felt like a whisper in a room full of shouts, and a quiet hurt began to coil in her chest. She'd driven 50 miles through a snowstorm for this, hoping, as always, for a moment of connection. But the familiar sting of being an afterthought was already settling in. Taking a seat at the far end of the long dining table, Sarah scanned the room, seeking a friendly face. No one met her gaze. The servers glided by, offering champagne to everyone but her, as if she blended into the wallpaper. Then her eyes landed on the fireplace, and her breath caught. Where the old family portrait once hung a faded photo of Sarah, Claire, Ethan, and their parents, taken at a 4th of July picnic years ago, were two new framed images, their gold frames gleaming under the recessed lights. In one, Claire posed in front of the Golden Gate Bridge, her Fashion Line's logo emblazoned across her white blazer, every inch the magazine cover star. In the other, Ethan stood in a sleek office, clutching an Entrepreneur of the Year award, his grin as polished as the plaque. Sarah's college graduation photo, a humble snapshot of her in a cap and gown, beaming despite her family's lukewarm applause, was gone. Erased. The absence hit like a punch to the gut, igniting a shock that made her hands tremble. Had they deliberately removed her? The realization that her family had written her out of their narrative was a blade, slicing through years of quiet endurance. Her heart pounded, a mix of hurt and disbelief swirling in her mind. She gripped the edge of her chair, the polished wood cool against her palms, and forced herself to look away. The room spun with laughter and clinking glasses, but Sarah felt like she was underwater, the sounds muffled and distant. Why was she here, playing a role in a family that didn't see her? The question sparked a suspenseful tension, a curiosity about what she would do next. Would she shrink, as she always had? Or would this be the moment she stopped being invisible? The absence of her photo wasn't just an oversight, it was a declaration, a message that she didn't belong. As Diane's voice rose, calling for the first toast, Sarah's mind raced, a flicker of resolve cutting through the pain. Readers are left hanging, curious about how she'll respond to this public erasure, sensing the storm brewing beneath her calm exterior. The dining room of Diane Bennett's upstate New York home glowed under the soft light of a crystal chandelier, its prisms casting delicate rainbows across the mahogany table. The scent of roasted lamb and truffle mashed potatoes lingered, mingling with the faint pine of a towering Christmas tree in the corner. Sarah Bennett, seated at the far end of the table, felt like an outsider in her own family's story, her $50 silk scarf gift from an Albany boutique buried among glittering designer bags. At 34, she was used to being the overlooked middle child, eclipsed by her sister Claire's Manhattan glamour and brother Ethan's tech star charisma. But as the evening's toasts began, Diane's words would cut deeper than ever, igniting anger and disbelief in Sarah's heart, fueling a resolve that promised to reshape her future. The cruel laughter that followed would leave readers gripped with suspense, eager to see how Sarah would reclaim her dignity. The dinner had been a parade of extravagance, with servers gliding between guests, refilling champagne flutes and offering sculpted salads that looked more like art than food. Claire, radiant in a white silk dress, regaled Aunt Margaret with tales of her latest fashion line launch, her diamond earrings catching the light with every laugh. Ethan, lounging confidently, debated the merits of Tesla versus Rivian with cousins, his Entrepreneur of the Year award from a recent startup contest already a family legend. Diane, the evening's centerpiece in her crimson gown, beamed with pride, her eyes rarely straying to Sarah, who sat quietly, her thrift store coat a silent testament to her financial struggles 50 miles away. Robert, Sarah's father, nodded absently when she'd tried to mention her new apartment, his attention quickly pulled back to Claire's anecdotes. The dismissal stung, but Sarah swallowed it, her fork tracing patterns in her untouched potatoes, her hurt a familiar companion. The room's energy shifted as the toasts began, glasses clinking in anticipation. Aunt Margaret raised hers to family health, her voice warm but distant. Ethan, ever the showman, toasted to the grind of genius, earning chuckles and raised glasses. Then Diane stood, her presence commanding silence. At 60, she was a vision of poise, her crimson dress hugging her frame, her smile polished from years of hosting such gatherings. Sarah's heart lifted for a fleeting moment, a naive hope that her mother might acknowledge her. Even if just a nod for showing up despite the snowstorm that had made her 50-mile drive treacherous. Diane's glass gleamed as she surveyed the room, her voice clear and deliberate. "I'm proud of my children," she began, her tone swelling with maternal pride. "Claire, our shining light, conquering Manhattan with her vision. Ethan, our brilliant innovator, building empires before he's 30. The room murmured approval, glasses raised in unison. Sarah held her breath, her fingers tightening around her flute, waiting for her name. Diane paused, her lips curling into a smirk that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. "Well," she added, her voice dripping with mockery, "almost all my children." Laughter erupted, sharp and jagged, slicing through the air like broken glass. Claire stifled a giggle behind her manicured hand, her eyes glinting with amusement. Ethan shot Sarah a mocking grin, his glass tilted toward her as if toasting her exclusion. Robert stared at his plate, his silence a betrayal as loud as the laughter. Aunt Margaret's chuckle faltered, but she said nothing, her gaze darting away. The guests' cousins, family friends, even the servers joined in, their nervous chuckles amplifying the shock that rooted Sarah to her seat. How could her mother say that, so casually, in front of everyone? The room spun, a wave of disbelief crashing over her. Diane's words weren't a slip, they were a deliberate jab, a public declaration that Sarah was the family's failure, the exception to their pride. Her cheeks burned, not with tears, but with a searing anger that pulsed in her veins. She'd spent years enduring their indifference, sending $200 to help Claire's boutique when she could barely afford rent, staying silent when Ethan's tuition was paid while her dental bills went ignored. But this was a line crossed, a wound too deep to ignore. The laughter faded, but the weight of her family's complicity lingered, their silence endorsing Diane's cruelty. Sarah's heart pounded, a suspenseful energy building inside her. She wasn't the invisible daughter anymore, the one who cleared plates while others shone. Something shifted, a resolve as cold and steady as the snow outside, whispering that she could reclaim her dignity. Readers are left on edge, eager to see how Sarah will respond. Will she confront Diane, walk away, or unveil a truth that shifts the power? The public humiliation, so stark against the festive backdrop, sets a tense stage, promising a reckoning that will challenge the family's polished facade and reveal the cost of their betrayal. The dining room of Diane Bennett's upstate New York mansion shimmered with the glow of a crystal chandelier, its light dancing across the polished mahogany table where guests savored the last bites of roasted lamb and truffle mashed potatoes. The air carried the faint scent of pine from a towering Christmas tree, its ornaments twinkling like stars against the December night. Sarah Bennett, 34 and perpetually overshadowed, sat at the table's far end, her thrift store coat a silent contrast to the designer furs draped nearby. Moments earlier, her mother Diane had delivered a crushing blow during her birthday toast, praising Sarah's siblings, Claire and Ethan, while mocking Sarah as the exception, sparking cruel laughter. The hurt and anger from that public humiliation churned within her, but now, as Sarah stood, purse in hand, a bold act was about to unfold, one that would ignite suspense and anticipation, leaving the room and readers reeling with mystery. The small white envelope she held promised to unravel her family's betrayal, and Diane's scream would soon amplify the question. What did they see? Sarah's heart pounded as she rose, her movements deliberate despite the tremor in her hands. The laughter from Diane's toast still echoed in her ears, Claire's stifled giggle and Ethan's mocking grin burning like salt in a wound. Her father Robert's averted gaze and the guests' complicity had cemented her resolve. She was done being the invisible middle child, the one who sent $200 to Claire's boutique while scraping by on $1,200 rent 50 miles away. The envelope in her purse, prepared after a neighbor's casual remark about her grandfather's Adirondacks lake house, held proof of a betrayal so profound it had reshaped her understanding of family. As she crossed the room, the clink of champagne flutes and murmurs of conversation faded, replaced by a suspenseful hum in her mind. Every step toward Diane's table felt like a countdown, each footfall amplifying the anticipation of what was to come. Diane sat at the head of the table, her crimson dress a beacon of authority, her diamond earrings catching the light as she chatted with Aunt Margaret. Her champagne flute rested beside her, half full, its bubbles catching the chandelier's glow. Sarah's fingers brushed the envelope, a neat rectangle, unassuming yet heavy with truth. Inside was a note and a link to a shared drive containing documents Sarah had unearthed, her grandfather's will, naming her the sole heir to a $500,000 lake house, and forged signatures that had allowed her parents to rent it out for $60,000 a year while she struggled. The betrayal had stunned her, but now it fueled her courage. With a steadying breath, she leaned over Diane's table, her hand hovering above the flute. "What's this?" Diane snapped, her frown sharp as she noticed Sarah's movement. Sarah didn't answer, her face a mask of calm despite the mystery pulsing in her veins. In one fluid motion, she dropped the envelope into the glass, the paper sinking to the bottom like a stone in a pond. The room seemed to hold its breath, the act so unexpected that even Claire's chatter faltered. Sarah turned, her boots soft against the hardwood, and walked toward the exit, ignoring Aunt Margaret's hesitant call. "Sarah, where are you going?" The weight of every eye followed her, but she kept her chin high, her heart racing with anticipation. What would they do when they saw the truth? The question hung like a taut wire, pulling readers into the suspense. As she reached the foyer, grabbing her coat from the rack, a piercing scream shattered the silence Diane's, high-pitched and panicked, cutting through the festive facade like a blade. Sarah froze, her hand on the doorknob, the sound sending a jolt of curiosity through her. They'd opened the envelope. They'd seen the will, the forgeries, the proof of their theft. But what did they see in that moment? Guilt, fear, or defiance? Outside, the snow fell in lazy flakes, glittering under the streetlights like scattered coins. Sarah's breath clouded in the frigid air, her pulse still hammering as she crossed the driveway to her car, 50 miles from home. The scream lingered in her mind, a signal that the facade of her family's pride had cracked. Readers are hooked, eager to know what the envelope revealed to Diane and how it will shift the power in this fractured family. The mystery of their reaction, will they beg, deny, or retaliate, sets a gripping stage, promising a confrontation that will expose the cost of their betrayal and test Sarah's newfound strength. Sarah Bennett sat alone in her modest one-bedroom apartment, 50 miles from her mother's opulent upstate New York mansion, the glow of her second-hand laptop casting shadows across the peeling wallpaper. It was a week before Diane's 60th birthday, and Sarah, 34, was still reeling from years of being the overlooked middle child, dismissed by her glamorous sister Claire and charismatic brother Ethan. Her thrift store coat and $50 gift-a-silk scarf from an Albany boutique paled next to her siblings' lavish offerings, but a deeper wound festered, the sense that her family had erased her. A casual remark from a neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, had sparked a curiosity that now consumed her. "Shame they sold your grandfather's lake house. He wanted you to have it." Those words led Sarah to a discovery that would unleash fury and disbelief, revealing a betrayal so vast, $500,000 stolen through forgery, that it would stoke readers' outrage and rally them to root for justice. Sarah's grandfather, Henry, had been her quiet champion, a man of few words who'd slip her $20 for books when her parents ignored her academic awards. His death 5 years ago had left a void, but she'd assumed his small estate, a lake house in the Adirondacks, had been sold, as her parents claimed. Mrs. Ellis's comment, dropped during a chance encounter at the local diner, hit like a spark in dry grass. "Sold?" Sarah had echoed, her coffee cup frozen midair. Mrs. Ellis nodded, assuming Sarah knew. The mystery gnawed at her, a nagging sense that something was wrong. That night she began digging, her fingers trembling as she searched online property records, expecting nothing but hoping for clarity. The Albany County Archives website was a maze, but Sarah, a library assistant, knew how to navigate records. After hours of clicking through tax filings, she found it. a deed for a lake house on Lake Placid, valued at $500,000, still in her name. Her heart raced, a mix of disbelief and anticipation. How could it be hers? She scrolled further, uncovering a scanned copy of her grandfather's will, dated a year before his death. The words were unequivocal. To my granddaughter, Sarah Bennett, I leave my lake house, for her strength and heart. Tears stung her eyes, but the next document stopped her cold, a power of attorney form, supposedly signed by her, authorizing her parents, Diane and Robert, to manage the property. The signature was hers, but she'd never signed it. The betrayal crystallized. Her parents had forged her name, renting out the house for $60,000 a year, pocketing the income while Sarah rationed groceries to cover $1,200 monthly rent. The scale of the deception hit like a tidal wave, unleashing a fury that made her hands shake. For years, she'd struggled working 40-hour weeks, skipping doctor visits to save $100, sending $200 to Claire's boutique when asked, all while her parents lived lavishly. Bank records, accessed through a public lien search, showed the rental income flowing into Diane and Robert's accounts, $180,000 over 3 years, enough for Claire's Manhattan apartment deposit and Ethan's startup funding. Meanwhile, when Sarah had asked for a $500 loan for a car repair, Diane had sighed. Times are tough, dear. The lie was a knife, twisting with every memory of her family's indifference. Readers feel the outrage, their blood boiling at the thought of parents stealing from their own child while flaunting their wealth at gala-like birthday parties. Sarah's hands shook as she called Ms. Larson, her voice betraying the anxiety that had taken root. Pack a bag, Ms. Larson instructed. Stay with someone tonight. Sarah fled to her friend Anna's cramped Albany apartment, where a lumpy couch and Anna's quirky dog offered fleeting safety. Collapsing there, she whispered, "They're acting like I'm the enemy." Anna's reply, "They're scared because you're powerful now," kindled a flicker of hope, but the folder's words haunted her. Readers are left eager, wondering how Sarah will counter her family's intimidation. Will the sedan reappear? Are the men connected to Diane's lawyer? The curiosity about her next move, paired with the fear of escalating threats, fuels a hunger for her triumph, urging readers to root for Sarah as she navigates this treacherous fight for justice. Sarah Bennett stood outside the Albany County Courthouse, the crisp March air biting her cheeks as she adjusted her navy blazer, chosen to signal resolve rather than mourning. Months had passed since she'd dropped an envelope into her mother Diane's champagne glass at her 60th birthday, exposing the theft of a $500,000 Adirondacks lake house through forged documents. At 34, Sarah, the overlooked middle child, had endured her family's public humiliation, smear campaigns, and chilling intimidation, a mysterious sedan, and late-night visitors demanding her silence. Now, with her lawyer, Ms. Larson, by her side, Sarah was ready to face Diane, Robert, Claire, and Ethan in court, armed with evidence of their betrayal. The legal battle would test her strength, but the judge's ruling would restore her legacy, sparking hope and empowerment, leaving readers in awe of her triumph and hungry for justice. Inside, the courtroom was a study in contrasts. The polished wood benches and stern judge's dais clashed with the raw emotion simmering among the attendees. Sarah took her seat beside Ms. Larson, a no-nonsense attorney whose sharp eyes missed nothing, a highlighter tucked behind her ear like a battle flag. Across the aisle, Diane sat rigid in a tailored gray suit, her glance at Sarah fleeting and cold. Robert, her father, looked haggard, his tie slightly askew, while Ethan avoided her gaze, his usual charisma dulled. Claire was absent, her Manhattan boutique likely shielding her from the fallout. The family's lawyer, Mr. Thompson, exuded confidence, his gold watch glinting as he shuffled papers, but Sarah sensed a crack in his armor. The suspense was electric. Would the truth prevail? Or would her family's wealth and influence bury it? Mr. Thompson opened, painting Sarah as a disgruntled daughter, motivated by spite and confused by grief over her grandfather's estate. His words were smooth, but they grated, each one a reminder of the $60,000 in annual rent her parents had pocketed while she scraped by on $1,200 a month, 50 miles away. Sarah's jaw tightened, but Ms. Larson's steady hand on her arm kept her grounded. Then Ms. Larson rose, her voice calm but lethal, laying out the facts like a prosecutor building a case. She presented Henry's will, naming Sarah as the sole heir to the lake house, and forged power of attorney forms, digitally manipulated to bear Sarah's signature. Bank records showed $180,000 in rental income diverted to Diane and Robert's accounts, funding Claire's fashion line and Ethan's startup. "This isn't family drama," Ms. Larson concluded. "It's theft." Readers feel a surge of hope, sensing the tide turning. The testimony of Mrs. Ellis, a neighbor who'd known Sarah's grandfather, was a turning point. At 78, she walked to the stand with a quiet dignity, clutching a Christmas card from Henry. "He always said the lake house was for Sarah, his quiet strength," she testified, reading aloud Henry's words. "Hope this house brings you peace one day." Mr. Thompson tried to rattle her, suggesting memory lapses, but Mrs. Ellis smiled. "I forget plenty at my age, sir, but not this." The courtroom stilled, even the stenographer pausing, and Sarah's throat tightened with gratitude. Then came the bombshell: leaked emails from Mr. Thompson's firm, uncovered by Ms. Larson's team, proving he'd advised the family to suppress the will, knowing it was valid. The evidence landed like a thunderclap, fueling readers' empowerment as Sarah's case solidified. When Sarah took the stand, she spoke simply, her voice steady despite the weight of her family's stares. "I didn't know the house was mine. I believed it was sold. I worked, struggled, and stayed quiet until I couldn't." The truth was her armor, and the judge's nod felt like validation. After a brief recess, he delivered his ruling. "The court finds in favor of Sarah Bennett. The property is restored to her, with all rental income repaid, plus interest." Diane's face paled. Robert muttered under his breath, and Ethan stared at the floor. Ms. Larson whispered, "It's yours now." And Sarah exhaled, a cathartic wave washing over her. Weeks later, the district attorney filed charges against Diane and Robert for forgery and fraud, while Mr. Thompson faced a state bar ethics review. Claire's sponsors vanished, and Ethan's startup faltered. Readers are left in awe, inspired by Sarah's strength as she transforms from the mocked exception into a woman who reclaimed her legacy. The hope of her victory, paired with the empowerment of seeing justice served, resonates deeply, urging readers to cheer for her new beginning in the lake house that was always meant to be hers. Sarah Bennett stood on the porch of her Adirondacks lake house, the late spring breeze carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers across Lake Placid's shimmering surface. The $500,000 property, her grandfather's legacy, was now hers, reclaimed after a grueling legal battle that exposed her family's betrayal. At 34, Sarah had endured public humiliation at her mother Diane's 60th birthday, a smear campaign, and chilling intimidation, all for daring to uncover the truth. Her parents had forged documents to steal the house, pocketing $60,000 in annual rent while she struggled 50 miles away on $1,200 a month. The courtroom victory restoring her ownership and sparking criminal charges against Diane and Robert had been cathartic. But this moment, as Sarah stepped into her new home, was transformative. Surrounded by friends who valued her, with the promise of a future with Michael and a photo hung as a symbol of her reclaimed self, Sarah's journey from betrayal to belonging filled her with joy and inspiration, leaving readers uplifted by her resilience and the warmth of her chosen family. The lake house, A cedar-shingled retreat with wide windows and a stone fireplace was more than a property, it was a promise kept. Sarah's grandfather Henry had intended it as her sanctuary, a place for the quiet strength he'd always seen in her. Moving in was a quiet act, no fanfare, just a U-Haul packed with her modest belongings from her Albany apartment. The mailbox now read, Sarah Bennett. A simple declaration of ownership that felt like a rebirth. Inside, the house was sparsely furnished, a thrift store couch, a mismatched dining table, but it buzzed with potential. Sarah's first act was to hang a photo in the hallway, a candid snapshot from a long-ago summer barbecue. In it, she was mid-laugh, her hair tousled, the edges blurry but her joy undeniable. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers, a symbol of the self she'd reclaimed after years of being erased by her family's indifference. The act sparked a quiet joy, a lightness in her chest as she stepped back to admire it, readers sharing in the hope of her fresh start. Her friends, the family she'd chosen, brought the house to life. Anna, her steadfast ally who'd sheltered her during the darkest days of her family's counterattack, arrived with a homemade apple pie, its edges predictably charred. Tradition, Anna grinned, setting it on the counter as her quirky golden retriever Max promptly stole a napkin. Laura, a colleague from the library, brought her toddler, Sam, who insisted on drinking juice from a cereal bowl, leaving sticky fingerprints on the windows. Michael, a gentle carpenter who'd helped Sarah through the trial's aftermath, arrived with a toolbox, offering to fix a creaky porch step. His quiet presence and the faint outline of a ring box in his pocket hinted at a future neither rushed, but both cherished. Their gatherings were chaotic spilled drinks, Max's playful chaos, Sam's giggles echoing off the wood beams, but they were beautiful. Filled with the kind of warmth Sarah had craved at Diane's sterile gala. Readers feel the inspiration, seeing a family built on mutual respect, a stark contrast to the betrayal of Claire's smirks and Ethan's mockery. When Sarah took the stand, she spoke simply, her voice steady despite the weight of her family's stares. I didn't know the house was mine. I believed it was sold. I worked, struggled, and stayed quiet until I couldn't. The truth was her armor, and the judge's nod felt like validation. After a brief recess, he delivered his ruling. The court finds in favor of Sarah Bennett. The property is restored to her, with all rental income repaid, plus interest. Diane's face paled, Robert muttered under his breath, and Ethan stared at the floor. Ms. Larson whispered, "It's yours now." And Sarah exhaled, a cathartic wave washing over her. Weeks later, the district attorney filed charges against Diane and Robert for forgery and fraud, while Mr. Thompson faced a state bar ethics review. Claire's sponsors vanished, and Ethan's startup faltered. Readers are left in awe, inspired by Sarah's strength as she transforms from the mocked exception into a woman who reclaimed her legacy. The hope of her victory, paired with the empowerment of seeing justice served, resonates deeply, urging readers to cheer for her new beginning in the lake house that was always meant to be hers. Sarah Bennett stood on the porch of her Adirondacks lake house, the late spring breeze carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers across Lake Placid's shimmering surface. The $500,000 property, her grandfather's legacy, was now hers, reclaimed after a grueling legal battle that exposed her family's betrayal. At 34, Sarah had endured public humiliation at her mother Diane's 60th birthday, a smear campaign, and chilling intimidation, all for daring to uncover the truth. Her parents had forged documents to steal the house, pocketing $60,000 in annual rent while she struggled 50 miles away on $1,200 a month. The courtroom victory restoring her ownership and sparking criminal charges against Diane and Robert had been cathartic. But this moment, as Sarah stepped into her new home, was transformative. Surrounded by friends who valued her, with the promise of a future with Michael, and a photo hung as a symbol of her reclaimed self, Sarah's journey from betrayal to belonging filled her with joy and inspiration, leaving readers uplifted by her resilience and the warmth of her chosen family. The lake house, a cedar-shingled retreat with wide windows and a stone fireplace, was more than a property, it was a promise kept. Sarah's grandfather Henry had intended it as her sanctuary, a place for the quiet strength he'd always seen in her. Moving in was a quiet act, no fanfare, just a U-Haul packed with her modest belongings from her Albany apartment. The mailbox now read, Sarah Bennett, a simple declaration of ownership that felt like a rebirth. Inside, the house was sparsely furnished, a thrift store couch, a mismatched dining table, but it buzzed with potential. Sarah's first act was to hang a photo in the hallway, a candid snapshot from a long-ago summer barbecue. In it, she was mid-laugh, her hair tousled, the edges blurry but her joy undeniable. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers, a symbol of the self she'd reclaimed after years of being erased by her family's indifference. The act sparked a quiet joy, a lightness in her chest as she stepped back to admire it, readers sharing in the hope of her fresh start. Her friends, the family she'd chosen, brought the house to life. Anna, her steadfast ally who'd sheltered her during the darkest days of her family's counterattack, arrived with a homemade apple pie, its edges predictably charred. Tradition, Anna grinned, setting it on the counter as her quirky golden retriever Max promptly stole a napkin. Laura, a colleague from the library, brought her toddler, Sam, who insisted on drinking juice from a cereal bowl, leaving sticky fingerprints on the windows. Michael, a gentle carpenter who'd helped Sarah through the trial's aftermath, arrived with a toolbox, offering to fix a creaky porch step. His quiet presence, and the faint outline of a ring box in his pocket, hinted at a future neither rushed but both cherished. Their gatherings were chaotic spilled drinks, Max's playful chaos, Sam's giggles echoing off the wood beams, but they were beautiful, filled with the kind of warmth Sarah had craved at Diane's sterile gala. Readers feel the inspiration, seeing a family built on mutual respect, a stark contrast to the betrayal of Claire's smirks and Ethan's mockery. The lake house became a canvas for Sarah's new life. She and Michael spent weekends tending the garden, planting lavender and daisies along the path to the water, their hands brushing as they worked. "Good spot for a swing someday," he said, his eyes crinkling, and Sarah's heart fluttered with anticipation. They weren't rushing after years of fighting for her place. She savored the slow build of trust. Anna's visits brought laughter, her stories of library patrons and burnt pies, a reminder that life could be light. Laura's dog, bolder each time, once swiped a slice of pizza, sparking a chase that left everyone breathless with laughter. These moments, small but vivid, wove a tapestry of belonging, healing the wounds of Diane's toast that had branded Sarah the exception. Readers are uplifted, their joy mirroring Sarah's, as she finds a home not just in the house, but in these connections. Reflecting on her journey, Sarah knew the truth had been for her, not her family. Diane and Robert faced fraud charges, their social standing crumbling as Claire's sponsors fled and Ethan's startup faltered. Sarah didn't gloat. She'd already won something greater. The photo on the wall, hung with Michael's steady hands, was her declaration. She was no longer the invisible daughter who cleared plates while others shone. Her story, from a $50 scarf overshadowed by Gucci bags to a lake house reclaimed, inspires awe, resonating with American values of resilience and self-determination. Readers are left hopeful, cheering for Sarah's new chapter and reflecting on their own chosen families, those who see and celebrate their true selves. The story of Sarah Bennett's journey from family betrayal to personal triumph offers profound lessons for older Americans, particularly those reflecting on their own family dynamics and legacy. One key message is the power of self-worth in the face of rejection. Despite her family's dismissal and public humiliation, Sarah's courage to confront their theft of her $500,000 inheritance teaches that valuing oneself is a lifelong necessity, even when those closest to us fail to see our worth. For seniors, who may face being overlooked by younger generations or feel sidelined in family decisions, this underscores the importance of asserting their voice, whether in reclaiming a role in family matters or pursuing personal passions. Another lesson is the strength found in chosen family friends like Anna and Michael, who uplift Sarah, proving that love and belonging can be built beyond blood ties. This resonates deeply with older audiences, encouraging them to nurture relationships with those who truly value them, perhaps through community groups or reconnecting with old friends. Finally, Sarah's act of hanging a photo in her lake house symbolizes reclaiming one's narrative, a reminder to seniors that it's never too late to redefine their legacy, whether by sharing stories, mending rifts, or embracing new beginnings. These lessons inspire resilience and hope, urging older Americans to stand firm in their worth, seek authentic connections, and shape their story with dignity, no matter the challenges faced. Thank you so much for watching. We hope this video on family conflict and solutions was helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, Silent Wars, for more content that can help you navigate family challenges and improve your relationships. Stay tuned for our next video.